I'm sure we're all familiar with the idea of playing mobile phone fighting games, and although they existed back in the days of flip phones with physical keypads, they truly came into their own during the smartphone era. A while ago, I covered the Street Fighter IV mobile ports, and after doing a bunch of research, I came to the conclusion that while not as feature-rich as the console versions, they're still really fun and are great to kill some time with. It was then that I awoke from my slumber, almost like I had suffered from a nightmare, one where I remembered a certain mobile fighting game I used to play all the time as a teenager but somehow forgot about its existence. Known for its expansive character roster, plethora of system mechanics, and high execution requirements, 2011's The King of Fighters XIII is a classic within the die-hard FGC crowd, but did you know that there's a full conversion to both iOS and Android? To top it off, the game is completely free with 2 optional DLC characters, and without them, it still contains over 30 characters, so I had to check it out. Going under the incredibly confusing name of KOF 2012F, which kind of sounds like the chemical compound for a medicine used to treat psychosis, this title is quite the enigma, so I felt it necessary to spend the next 20 or so minutes trying to figure it out. From now on, I'll refer to the game as KOF 2012, so please keep that in mind. With our meters full and combos ready to go, let's rip out a hyperdrive cancel and explore what KOF 2012 has to offer. Unlike most arcade and console titles, it can be difficult to find accurate information surrounding the development and backstory of mobile games, but I did manage to find some interesting resources. The earliest mention I could find of a smartphone conversion of KOF 13 was in July 2011, when Siliconera published an article claiming that the King of Fighters I, a brand new entry into the series, had hit the App Store. With 14 characters and the high price of 900 yen, or $9, wow, this wasn't a bad deal at all, so reception was positive. To further expand their market share, SNK decided to release an updated version called The King of Fighters Android on, well, Android, and this had even more content as well as a lower price tag. Selling for $4.99, KOF Android received positive reviews on the Google Play Store, with an average score of 4.2 out of 5. With these 2 versions being surprisingly better than anyone had expected, Japanese outlet Famitsu interviewed series producer Kei Yamamoto about the iPhone version, and even though I had to take some creative liberties to fix Google Translate's broken Japanese to English translations, I think I've pieced together what Yamamoto was trying to say. The arcade version staff was involved, but we created a new team of staff for KOF I. We started out wondering whether KOF could be played on the iPhone, so the whole game was full of difficulties. In particular, the performance of techniques often changed due to differences in hardware characteristics, so we paid a lot of attention to adjusting them. The graphics are based on the arcade version of KOF 13, but we have made some adjustments for the iPhone. It's optimized to match the hardware capabilities. It's obvious by now that the development team at SNK wanted to maintain the core KOF experience, but do it in a way that could properly run on weaker hardware, so finding the balance between what visual flourishes to cut and which to keep couldn't have been easy. As for why SNK chose to port a series like KOF to the iPhone in the first place, Yamamoto doesn't go into too much detail, but he mentions that the worldwide appeal of both KOF and the iPhone made them seem like a great pairing, just like Billy Kane and his gigantic staff. How's that for a transition? On the topic of Billy, he showed up as a playable fighter in the King of Fighters I, but not in the arcade release of 13. That's kind of weird, especially because he's a beloved and well-known character who's been around forever. Yamamoto explained to Famitsu that when determining the iOS game's character roster, the team wanted to include a character fans were passionate about that wasn't already in KOF 13, so Billy was an easy choice. Yamamoto's final statement was that if the game was a success, other series like Samurai Shodown and Fatal Fury also might get the smartphone conversion treatment, and that development for KOF I was still going full steam ahead. He wasn't lying, as on May 3rd, 2012, the King of Fighters I 2012 power dunked its way onto the App Store, and this is more or less the game that I downloaded. I mean, the App Store screenshots make it look identical, and the title is also extremely similar, with the I being replaced by an A for the Android release. At this point, I was somewhat confused, but after returning to the App Store on my phone, I found the answer that I was looking for. In a very generous move, SNK decided to make the whole game free for everyone to download, which would be a nice end to the story, but for some reason the paid version is still available? The app descriptors and screenshots both look identical, so I don't think there are any major differences between the free and paid games. I honestly have no clue why this is the case, and if you have any information, please leave it in the comments because I couldn't find it during my research. Unfortunately, this is all the information concerning KOF I's development I can find. There don't seem to be any public press releases, developer interviews, previews, beta footage, etc., meaning that it's all been locked away in SNK's Vault of Doom. Okay, hyperbole aside, let's now dive into the gameplay and character roster of KOF 2012 to figure out how it all works. If we're counting the DLC characters, and we'll get to them later, so stay tuned, then KOF 2012 provides players with 34 playable fighters, which is crazy for a mobile game. I say this in all my KOF videos, but part of the series' appeal is how different these fighters all are to play, with their varying animations, movesets, combo routes, strategies, etc. going a mighty long way in promoting versatility. Thankfully, none of that is lost here, and even though I'm far from an expert, it doesn't seem like any of their moves have been stripped away from the console game. I tested out multiple characters in training mode and they all seemed totally complete without any signs of cut content, which is amazing. They even get alternate colors, and I can't even begin to imagine how difficult making the transition from console to smartphone would have been for the developers. Some of the characters' move lists are still radically lengthy, and I wish you good luck when attempting to do something like this on a touchscreen. Looking at the gameplay itself now, you might be a bit confused when noticing the button layout. Punch and kick are here, sure, but what do E, S, and HD mean? For simplicity's sake, let's go in order. E means evasion, and this is how you can perform a roll. In typical KOF 13 fashion, rolls can be performed to either travel forwards or backwards, and they allow you to phase through strikes. However, you can be grabbed out of one, so don't spam them. S is the special attack button, and these are for one-button special moves. I know that phrase is the stuff of nightmares for FGC diehards, but when playing a title in this genre on a touchscreen, it's desperately needed. Combining the button with different directional inputs lets you perform unique special moves, making it function a lot like Super Smash Bros. Instead of having to manually perform Wreckers with Mature, I can now spam the button to get the full string. And don't even get me started about how easy her Fireball is now. Normally, you would have to perform quarter circle forward, half circle back and punch, but with the special button, you can just press down and S. Call me crazy, but I don't think the game was originally balanced with inputs like this in mind, but it allows casual players looking for a fighting game to kill some time with to jump right in and start having fun, so I'm okay with it. Finally, HD lets you activate Hyperdrive, the game's universal install. You can use Hyperdrive in both neutral and in combos to cancel any normal into a special, and they can even lead into supers. Speaking of meter, there are many ways to use it, with the first being EX moves. These are performed with a motion input and S, and as far as I can tell, there are no shortcuts. If you want an EX special move, you have to perform the motion input, so get practicing. They cost 1 bar of your main meter, with the blue meter on top being used for special cancels, so even meter management made its way here too. To go slightly off topic for a little bit, I remember Seth Killian stating that for Marvel vs. Capcom 3, the simple mode in that game was meant to make newcomers think about when to do a special move rather than if they could do it in the first place, and I believe that same thought process carries over into KOF 2012 thanks to the S button. If you're a newcomer to the fighting game genre, seeing inputs like this can be somewhat intimidating, but if you have easy access to the S button, you would naturally become more strategic within your application of special moves. We're not done yet, however, as supers are here too. Regular motion inputs are accepted for these, but if they're giving you too much trouble, simply tap one of the on-screen meters for a one-button super. This makes comboing into them easier than ever, and I'm so grateful that I don't have to destroy my thumbs to use them here. It gets even crazier, as when you're in Hyperdrive, your level 2 super, more commonly known as the Neo Max super special move, can also be performed by tapping your character's icon in the top left. Even a scrub like me has access to wicked damage, and it's about as challenging as asserting dominance over my dog.
You are mine, little one. You are mine.
Seriously though, from devastating command grabs to advancing strikes to monster lariats, every level 2 is only a tap away. All of this adds up to make KOF 2012 a particularly intriguing example of a mobile fighting game, as instead of stripping the series formula back, it simply makes it a bit more accessible. It's easy to find insane combo videos online that demonstrate what dedicated KOF players are able to do when given access to a simpler button layout, and although this might ring alarm bells in your head about the ongoing debate surrounding fighting game accessibility, I don't think it's a problem here due to the game being on mobile. In other words, if the next mainline KOF game comes out with simple inputs that are objectively stronger than traditional motion inputs, the community will be in uproar, and rightfully so, but that begs the question, why? It might sound silly, but if you take a step back and look at the situation holistically, you'll find that giving all players easier access to high damage combo routes and movement tools doesn't exclusively assist newer players. Instead, it also helps the pros get better faster, and now we're just kind of back to square one. Since KOF 2012 is a game that exclusively exists on smartphones, meaning that no one will be judging it as a legitimate competitive experience, the simple controls are perfectly acceptable, at least in my opinion. However, if you still don't like them, it's as simple as turning them off in the pause menu, so you can have it either way. Rants about fighting game accessibility aside, the simple inputs are perhaps my favorite quality of the title. If I had to pull off motion inputs on a touchscreen to perform even the most basic of specials and supers, my hands would probably fall off. So SNK's balance of simple execution with high-level theoretical strategy is a welcome one, and it's why I keep coming back to KOF 2012. TLDR, the game is fun, and you can perform big command grabs with minimal effort. With how KOF 2012 is a downscaled mobile conversion of a home console title, you may think that it'd be very bare bones in terms of features, but you would be wrong. There's an abundance of things to see and do here, so much so to the point where I was genuinely impressed the first time I fired up the game. Luckily for us, each menu item has a number associated with it, so let's go in order. First up is single mode, and this contains 3-on-3 team battles, 1-on-1 single battles, survival, time attack, mission mode, and training. These are all the modes you would expect to see in a fighting game, and it's amazing how they're found in KOF 2012. It's nothing that I haven't seen before in the genre, so I wasn't blown away by its uniqueness or anything, but in terms of pure quantity, we're off to a great start. Hell, going into training mode and tapping this button provides access to combo trials, so it's clear to see that even when playing in single player, you have a lot to sink your teeth into. Getting into specifics now, the mission mode gives you similar objectives of increasing difficulty, although you're limited with who you can use. The mode is fun in short bursts, but I wish the goals had more variation, as there are really only 2 for you to mess around with. Unfortunately, team battle, single battle, and survival suffer from the same fate, as they get stale pretty quickly. There's only so much fun I can have fighting the AI after all. On the other hand, I gained more enjoyment out of time attack than I expected going in, as although this mode contains yet another series of CPU battles, the pressure of going for a load time was addictive, and it kept me coming back to experiment with new characters and strategies. Next up is multiplayer, and it comes in both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi flavors. The former lets you battle other people who are close to you, as well as share digital trading cards and replay data. These last 2 features are relatively minor in the grand scheme of things, but their inclusion tells us that SNK really pulled out all the stops for this title. When playing over Wi-Fi, you can play ranked matches with random players or casual matches with friends, and this makes use of Apple's Game Center. This is all fantastic, but I just couldn't find anyone to play against. I left my phone on the searching screen for ages, believe me, but I just wasn't able to pair up with another player. With how KOF 2012 is a mobile game, this makes a lot of sense, and I wasn't expecting it to be active anyway. Moving on to the gallery, lots of supplementary material can be found here, and they're all quite interesting. Sound tests, videos, and images can be experienced here. You can also view collector trading cards, and this brings me to the Rose Shop. As you make progress, your number of coins increases, and you can spend them on trading cards. These are digital versions of character artwork, with a total of 285 needing to be collected, meaning that you'll have to grind for coins if you want them all. There are also lengthy text strings that explain the game's narrative, providing players with expanded context about their favorite characters. If you ever wanted to learn about why a specific team was participating in KOF 13, then this mode is for you. Record lets players customize their online profiles, and I'm sure that we've all seen modes like this in other fighting games. Player and character statistics, which are great to have by the way, are also found here too. Game Center is home to achievements and online leaderboards, and there are hundreds of thousands of players to look at here. Everybody's accomplishments are but a tap away, and some players have an absurd number of points in the prize rankings. Finally, communication incorporates Twitter and Facebook integration, so if you ever wish to link your account to automatically post information about play statistics, this should help you do this. This sounds okay, but I honestly can't stand the idea of using either site, so I'm respectfully gonna give it a miss. You might have also noticed the glaringly obvious panel in the bottom right, and tapping it lets you view DLC. Ness, Kyo, and Classic Iori are the 2 bonus characters, with extra coins being available for purchase as well. Despite me spending the past week or so playing this game, I surprisingly haven't earned any of them, and tapping on the top right panel sadly doesn't do anything. No matter how much I tap it, it simply doesn't shower me with 3 points, and I feel scammed, darn it. When I try to view the characters in greater detail, tapping yes here also does nothing, so yeah, I'm confused. Despite these hiccups, the amount of content on offer here is nothing short of incredible, and if you didn't know this was a mobile game, it probably would have sounded like I was describing a home console title. To top it off, all the features here are freely available from the get-go, allowing players to instantly jump into whatever mode appeals to them the most, and this made recording footage so smooth. With all of that being said, combo trials are still my personal favorite, as I can quickly load in, pick Terry, and start dunking on the CPU. If I ever need to distract myself on public transport and don't want to use my mobile data, you know I'm going to do this to pass the time. As KOF 2012 is a mobile game, most of the big review outlets didn't pay any attention to it, although there are plenty of reviews from smaller publications we can find. On the App Store itself, the game sits at a 4.4 out of 5 star rating, with users claiming that they love the character roster and control scheme. On the other hand, a few players mentioned frequent crashes and performance issues, but I was fortunate enough to not experience these on my phone despite it being really old. Websites like Pocket Gamer and Touch Arcade feature the first 2 positive reviews I stumbled across during my research, and they helped form the game's Metacritic score of 88. This is way higher than I expected it to be, and I'm sure that any game publisher would be happy to see a score of this caliber being attributed to their release. What's important to note is that there exist reviews that feature more critical opinions, often lambasting KOF 2012's pre-existing microtransactions and frequent ads. As I mentioned earlier, KOF 2012 was originally a paid game with intrusive in-app purchases and advertisements, but with its relaunch under a free-to-play model, the more egregious of these were removed. After reading through several of the reviews cited by Metacritic, I noticed that most, if not all aspects of the title were praised, with the amount of content really taking the cake. My thoughts on this component are clear by now, but just to reiterate for a bit, it's amazing how jam-packed KOF 2012 is with stuff to do, and I have to commend SNK for making it free. It's very generous. Something else I thought of while playing concerns the irony behind the whole package. Porting a series that is known for being challenging to play into an ecosystem with simpler games developed for a target audience of casual players seems like a recipe for disaster, but despite this, SNK somehow pulled it off. It's not hard to find many reviewers, who most likely don't have much experience with fighting games mind you, applauding KOF 2012's character variety and plentiful gameplay mechanics. What makes it even crazier is when you realize they all had to use touchscreen controls to play, and despite some systems undergoing simplification for ease of use purposes, the game is much more challenging to control when looking at it overall. Criticisms concerning having zero tactile feedback in a game as precise as this did pop up occasionally in a few reviews, but these are few and far between. The only consistent issue critics wrote about was the title's online mode, with frequent lag and connection issues plaguing matches. As mentioned earlier, I tried to find a match to test it out for myself, but unfortunately couldn't find anyone to battle. On the other hand, I've also seen claims that online play wasn't that bad, and I even found some reviews that praised it, so it's probably a your mileage may vary type of deal. Some reviews even put KOF 2012 head-to-head with Street Fighter IV's mobile revisions, and there's one aspect that both of these games have in common, although it's not very positive. Going forward, and much like with Capcom, SNK didn't release any more ports of modern home console fighting games onto mobile devices, at least to my knowledge. There are plenty of fighting game franchises on the App Store, but none of these fall into the true fighting game genre, and I suspect that this is due to a more developed understanding of mobile game monetization. Developing a game that is easier for audiences to pick up and play, like KOF All-Star, a beat-em-up title for example, lends itself to seasonal content updates that encourage players to put some of their real-world money into the game's economy, with whales making up a majority of the spending. All-Star was shut down in late 2024, but more active titles like Capcom's Street Fighter Duel and the upcoming King of Fighters AFK aim to fill the void that All-Star has left, and you can bet your butt cheeks that the former's inclusion of gacha elements are making the development studio a boatload of money. I'm far from a mobile game expert, but I believe that these sorts of games are meant to be played over a long period of time, with progress slowly being made incrementally instead of all at once. I also believe that SNK views this as a more financially viable option over porting a traditional fighting game to smartphone storefronts in today's space. However, with that being said, classic titles like KOF 98 and 2002 are readily available on the App Store, but with how you only have to buy them once, I'm under the impression that potential return on investment would be lower when compared to a free-to-play title. I highly doubt that a more modern SNK fighting game like KOF 14, 15, City of the Wolves, etc. will ever come to handheld devices. Not counting U-Switch 2, go home please. So for those of you who like playing fighting games on the bus, my heart goes out to you. This means that KOF 2012 doesn't have much in the way of a legacy, although I still think it's a really fun time. KOF 2012 is quite the underrated entry in the series, and for those who enjoy short bursts of fighting game action, I highly recommend it. The game is extremely generous with the amount of content on offer, and it's really fun to play for a bit when you're on the go. With that being said, the actual KOF 13 is now on Switch, so if you're dying to play KOF on the bus, you're better off going with that version instead. But if you don't have a Switch or you just can't afford the game there, the free mobile version is a great substitute. It's a real shame that nothing ever came out of KOF 2012 in terms of a mobile sequel, and I think that the series' adoption of 3D graphics is part of the reason why. I talked about monetization before, but I can also imagine that it's easier to downscale a sprite-based game onto a smartphone than it is to do the same with console-quality 3D models. Modern smartphones can run these types of games, sure, but back in 2011? Yeah, that would have been a bit of a stretch. Overall, I had a great time learning all I could about KOF 2012, and even though researching its background proved to be a real challenge, knowing that I could whip out a burn knuckle with Terry at any moment kept me motivated. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you and your time, and I hope you had fun. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.